Page 39, page 40. Questions? Zero questions? Feel good about it? What do you got?
Verse 12.
Number 12. Okay, so we're going to look at the two terms. And it looks like I can factor a 4 out of both of them, and I can factor an x out. So a placeholder in math is going to be, that was a negative, so we have a negative here. We're going to have a negative 1, because 4x times negative 1 is negative 4x. If I factor a 4x out of 4xy, I'm left with just y. And that's done. What else do we see we might want to go over? Good? Yes? 14? 14. We have 3x squared plus 6x plus 9. And if you just look at it, it just looks like I can factor a number out. The biggest number that they all have in common is a 3. So if I factor a 3 out, then I'm left with x squared. Is that okay so far? Because 3 times x squared is 3x squared. Then if I factor a 3 out of 6, that means I'm left with 2x, because 3 times 2x is 6x. And if I factor a 3 out of 9, I'm left with a 3, because 3 times 3 is 9. So we undistributed is what we're looking at. Anything else? Good? Happy? Content? All right. Let's go to page 41 in our notes, please. Okay, so this is not in your notes. We can just kind of warm up on this. See how we do. Phones away, please. All phones, not just some. Let's see. Figuring out a place I can sit. I'll sit on this desk. I'm not in your line of sight, am I, your friend? My friend? Okay, good. All right, so let's think about things that we want to do. Is there a number? What's the biggest number that both goes into 16 and into 12? 4? Good. Do they both have the same letter? Can I factor the same letter out of both of them? No. If I factor a 4 out of 16, 4 times 4 is 16, so I'm left with a 4x, because 4 times 4x is 16x. Minus, if I factor 4 out of 12, I get a 3, and the y comes along. So if I redistributed, I get 4 times 4x is 16x. 4 times negative 3y is negative 12y. Okay, again, you don't have this on your notes. We're just warming up on it. Second question, what does it look like I have in common between those two terms? X. So if I factor an x out, I'm left with y plus 2. Okay, these were the same, so they just come straight out. And then number 3. So we have to realize that xy squared is the same thing as xyy. And then I have 2xy. What do I have in common between those two sets of terms? X and a y. Okay, so an xy comes out front, and then I am left with a y and a plus 2. And it's done. We've unfactored them. Okay, so again, that was just a warm-up. We didn't have that necessarily in your notes, I don't believe. Okay, so we're at the process where we're starting to undo our distributing. It's called factoring. We're looking for things that they have in common between terms. Remember, a term is something that's separated by an addition or a subtraction sign. Okay? Let's see. That's just the title. I'm just looking at that. Cool. All right. So let's take a look at this. We have two terms. This is a term, and this is a term. Agree? Does that make sense so far? So, term, and term. Okay? What does it appear we have in common between the two? Yeah, x plus 3. Do you feel comfortable with that so far? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to pull an x plus 3 out. Okay, that's what we have in common. I'm going to make a second set of parentheses, and whatever I have left, I'm going to put in the other set of parentheses, and it's done. Okay, so you can factor a whole binomial out of multiple terms if you have it in common. Okay, does that seem okay? Make sense? All right, so we have two terms. What do I have in common between these two terms? X minus 1. Okay, so that's my first set of parentheses. What do I have left? I have 2x plus 5. You just write it right in there. Done. Okay? You're like, wait, there's got to be more to it. So this is the first skill that we're going to be learning as we progress through the factoring. Okay, we're going to be doing this kind of stuff. Okay. So what do I have in common between those two? They're both the same. They have to be the same. If they're not the same, they're not a common factor. So that's my first set of parentheses. Write another set of parentheses. What do I have left? 3x minus 2. Done. Pretty straightforward, I hope. Okay, heading to the second page, yes? Any questions so far? All right, again, we're looking at our two items. It looks like I have a 2x plus 3, that's the same. Okay, so I'm totally good with that. But, ooh, hey friends, is there really a 1 right there? Yeah. So what do I have left behind then? There you go. So you have to be able to recognize if you just have parentheses sitting there all alone, there's a 1 that's always in front of it. We don't always put it. Okay. Life seem all right? All right. So this one has 4 terms. Okay? Term, 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 term. Agree? Does that make sense? All right. When you have 4 terms done, you look at your very first 2. That's all I'm going to look at for right now. What do I have in common between those? Realize that x to the third is x, x, x. X squared is x, x. What's the maximum number of x's they have the same between them? They have 2 of them. XX and XX. X times x is x squared, right? So I'll write this first. I can factor an XX out of both of those. Then I'm going to say, well, I'm left behind. I have 1x. I have a plus sign. And there's technically a 1 that's up there. So I get that. So let me pause there. We're not done. I'm just going to pause there. Do you feel comfortable with the math I've done? We're not going to leave XX as XX. We're going to change it to x squared eventually. Okay? Actually, we do that right now. So that's the same thing as this. Does that seem to make sense? Okay, we have one more portion to do. So this sign right here always comes down right here. Good so far? What do I have in common between these? A 7. If I factor 7 out, I'm left with an x plus, and what's a placeholder in math? 1. So 7 and 7 times 1 are the same thing. So I have that. Do you feel comfortable with the math I've just done? Does this look like what we have up on example 3 now? I think so. So I have this in common and this in common. So that's going to come out front. X plus 1. and then I'm going to make another set of parentheses, and whatever I have left behind, I'm going to put in the other set of parentheses, and it's done. So if you have 4 terms, you say, okay, let's look at the first 2 terms. Get something out, get that done. And then you look at your third and fourth term and say, what do I have in common there? Factor it out. If inside the parentheses is the same, then that can come out front. If it was x plus 1 and x plus 2,000, x plus 1 and x plus 2,000 are not the same. So you couldn't factor it any further than this step. Okay, so sometimes you might have to stop there, but this here is our answer. It's called factor by grouping. Okay, you're grouping it. I grouped the first 2, the first and second term. I grouped the third and fourth term. What do we have in common between those? And move on. Is that it? There's one more? Okay. Can I move on? All right, so we're going to use the same language as we did before. We have 4 terms, agreed? I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Agree? I guess we can include that plus with that. Okay, so I'm going to look at my first 2 terms. Those are my first 2, agree? So let's realize that I have 4. X to the third is x times x times x. 12 is the same thing as 4 times 3 times x times x. Okay, this is all what we have in common on our first 2 terms. Okay, so friends, let's take a look at it. What number do they both have the same? What number? 4? How many x's do they have the same? So I'll take those 2 right there. I'll take those 2 right there. It doesn't matter which 2 I take on each term. I mean, x is x. Okay? So out front, I'm going to take 4xx, and then I'm going to have x plus 3 left. What's 4xx written in appropriate terms? 4x squared. Okay? So next, we're going to look at our next 2 numbers. So this negative sign is going to come straight down here. Is that okay? So I'm going to bring this over this way. So I have negative 3x minus 9. Okay. So see this negative here? That means I'm going to take a negative out, and it's going to change both signs. So think about this. If I redistribute that negative back in, do I get negative 3x minus 9? Let's make that 9 a little nicer. Do you agree from this step to this step? Is this we check? We good? All right, ready? What can I factor out of each of those? 3. If I factor 3 out of 3x, I'm left with x. If I factor 3 out of 9, I'm left with this. Let's pause for a sec. Do you feel comfortable with the math I just did? Notice I kind of separated it into 2 parts. I had the first 2 terms, and I had the second 2 terms that I dealt with. I now have this being the same, so that's going to come out front. And then what do I have left? What do I have left? 4x squared minus 3. And we're done. So this is a much different process. If you took these notes, you're going to do just fine. Just kind of refer back to the notes when you're trying the problems, okay? So let's take a look. I want to give you the opportunity to start and see how you do, okay? Ask me if you have some questions. The nice thing is, the odd answers are on Schoology. So let's have us do pages 43. Oops. Pages 43 and 44. And let's have us do 4 through 17, all of them. Okay, that'll be due tomorrow. But you have the opportunity to start it now. Got it?